Washington Post KFF poll finds a majority of Americans support restrictions that affect transgender children. Meantime, former NCAA champion swimmer and activist Riley Gaines is urging female athletes to boycott competing against transgender girls.
So this clip from Fox News is unbelievable on two fronts. First and foremost, because it is citing something that the Washington Post put forward in a very dishonest way, which is this claim that there is this poll that shows that most Americans support anti-trans policies, which is simply not the case.
How's this going to go? Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel live with the details. I thought that those poll results were very interesting to read yesterday, Mike.
Fascinating numbers, Dana. Good morning to you. That Washington Post poll finds most Americans support anti-trans policies favored by the GOP.
The specific question that they put in the headline, for whatever reason, was about the majority of Americans not supporting gender-affirming care for people who are under the age of 18, which to that I say, your opinion is irrelevant. Everybody's opinion really is irrelevant aside from the actual people who are trying to get that gender-affirming care. Of course, we don't poll most Americans about whether or not they think chemotherapy is appropriate for cancer patients. That is something that should be between a doctor and the patient and be done on a case-by-case basis because that's how all medicine works. But if you actually look at the answers to the other questions on the poll, you actually see that the overwhelming majority of Americans support trans people and are against all of these anti-trans policies that the Republicans are pushing. On top of that, it's also worth noting that the poll that they pushed is something that is an old poll number that is contradicted by more recent polls. But you see, Fox News has no interest in the truth, and the Washington Post wants to sell a headline. And so fundamentally, at this moment in time, transphobia is the big ticket item if you want to get a bunch of attention, especially interrogating the potential for gender-affirming care for trans youth, which once again is something that is fundamentally not the business of cisgender folks, really. And the other part that's ridiculous is them pretending that it's just this blanket statement against trans people and in support of the conservatives, despite the fact that, once again, the polls show that to be not the case. But why do Republicans so hyper-focus on gender-affirming care for trans youth? Well, it allows them to create a demographic that, of course, they don't let speak for themselves, but allows them to fearmonger about and tell parents that, oh, these children are transing their genders, when in reality, that is not something that's like rapidly exploding all of a sudden. And there are plenty of people that we know who have transitioned early on in life and are living very happy lives to this very day. People like Kim Petras, for example. But instead, they fearmonger about it. They talk specifically about surgeries and say everything is surgery. Oh my goodness gracious, everything is surgery. But if you actually look at the time scale of like when you would actually like start hormones, which would be at the normal puberty age, because let's be clear, that's what people are talking about when they're talking about gender affirming care for trans youth. They're just talking about kids going through whatever puberty they're the most comfortable with at the normal puberty age. Any type of surgery is going to happen after several years of being on hormones, and at that point, they're almost certainly going to be adults. But of course, these conservatives don't care. They don't care about the truth, and they don't care about the well-being of children. These are the same Republicans that are trying to quite literally send children back into like meat processing facilities across the country. These are the same people that literally defend child marriage. It's not about keeping children safe. It's about putting paranoia and fear in the minds of parents in order to get them to vote for these deeply unhinged right-wing policies that really nobody supports. And fundamentally, that's why the core of the Republican Party to this very day is just conspiratorial nonsense. Because when you talk about gender-affirming care in very plain terms, like just pointing out the simple fact that it really is just about making sure that people can go through puberty at the normal age and whichever puberty they're comfortable with, then it seems a lot less threatening and scary. And all of a sudden, it seems like just like a normal thing that somebody might do if they are trans and want to get access to gender-affirming care. But all of the bills that they're trying to push to ban trans people from the bathroom, to try and ban trans people from sports, to try and ban trans people in some sense from public life entirely, depending on the way you interpret their anti-drag laws, most Americans are deeply, deeply against those things.